Hello, this is Julia C. Welcome to 408 Home and Home. Now, lately, in a group of realtor, there are a lot of people talking about there's some of the clients got blackmail by the tenant mobile, and they send an email asking the landlord to pay them back for the all 3 years of been living there, all the rent return, because the landlord rent out the unit as unpermitted. And then there also some other cases that when they get a lawsuit into the court, there's an unreasonable judgment against the landlord. They think that's like really unfair. But remember, this is California. If you go to the court, most likely as a landlord, you would lose the case. So what happened is ended up the landlords have to let the tenant stay for a few more months in order to find a reasonable place. So there's a lot of problem between the landlord and the tenant relationship. Then you have to be very careful. If you handle it right, it's a very good investment as a real estate rental. But if you handle it wrong, you will make life miserable. So today I wanted to share with you the common question and answer by the California Association of Realtor. Many of them are by the like the legal hotline. They create this frequent ask question and answer. Hopefully that will help you if you are the landlord. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'm pointing out something that happened that I know that happened from the real estate lawyer from some of the clients mentioned, right? But the point is, if you're going to handle, if you're going to do your own management, you have to do it right. Otherwise, it would be a lot of problem down the road. So I'll just give you a warning. Okay, now real estate investment, as I showed you last time from the rent to buy, this is the Federal Reserve economic data. This is the pricing in California. Look at it from since 1971. The home price appreciated as a long term, right? But if you're looking at the data MLS that I've been keep track of from since 2001 in San Jose area, the median price in 2001 in San Jose is 438,000, and now it's like 1.3 million. So through the 22 years, we appreciated 198%. So it's like equivalent to almost 9% a year since 2001. Now, looking at the rent, this is from rent data. Starting in 2006, the rent is $1,831 a month for a 3-bedroom in San Jose area. And now in 2022, it's almost 4,000. And so that's like 118% return for the last 17 years. So that means equal to about 6.95, almost 7% a year in terms of rent increasing. So you have in one side, you have a housing appreciated 9% each year, and then also the rent increasing like almost 7% each year. So real estate investment seems like great investment, right? But why there's so many people don't want to do that? The thing is the property management. It's managing the rental home is a nightmare to some people. Okay, why is that? For one thing, a lot of people looking at the 1.3 million, right? 1.3 housing price, you put 25% down. At today's interest rate, 7.5. Your mortgage, property tax, insurance equal to like $8,302 a month. But you can only rent out like under 4,000. So you're negative 4,000 more, right? And then the property manager can cost like 5 to 10% in the area, and that will making your negative cash flow even more negative. So a lot of people wanted to save money because negative cash flow, and they wanted to do it themselves. And since like it's really easy, right? How hard it is. You find somebody in the property every month, you just collect the rent. If it's in repair, just hire somebody to fix it. And that's it. Knife is easy. Why paying somebody 5 to 10% to hire a property manager to do that? Right? So things really easy if you do it right? Now, is it really easy? We have this landlord and tenant guide for realtor for people who wanted to do a property manager. I think even for the landlord, you managing yourself, it would be helpful. But if you're interested in this guideline, you can put in the comment, make a request. I can send you a copy. But it's for realtor, but it will also be helpful for the landlord if you're doing yourself. I wanted to. There's a lot of questions. It's like 33 pages, a lot of questions, but I wanted to point out some of them that I know that people make mistake on. So I wanted to focus on those, but for the other detail part, you can read it yourself. For one thing, it will be so surprised that many of the landlord are like 5 to 10% that I know of, they're not using the written lease agreement. They just verbally have a lease agreement, like verbally talking. They hire somebody, or I mean, they find somebody. They speak their own language. They think, that's easy. We just say, okay, this is the house. I want to rent it to you. This is the monthly payment, and it is easy. But what happens if the tenant does not pay rent? How do they pay you? And what if something damage? Who's going to handle it? There's no detail at all, like no information, just a verbal. If you have this kind of good tenant, that should be fine, but you have to have a prevention just in case, right? So it's like the minimum written lease. You can just write it in a piece of paper. If you don't have like a legal paper form, at least a minimum, you have to identify the party who's going to live in the house. What if you rent it to this person and then ended up like, all the relatives moving in? You cannot. How do you handle it, right? And then also, of course, your property, where is it? And then how long they're going to be staying there? And what is the rent amount? And what is the time when it's going to pay the rent? And how do they pay the rent? Now, I know some people, some landlords say, hey, can you just pay cash? That kind of demand the tenant to pay cash. You cannot demand just a tenant to pay cash. If the tenant pay check and the check bouncing back, then you can demand them to pay like for 3 months of cash. After that, you have to go back to other way of payment. You cannot force the tenant to pay only cash and every month. Okay, so we're going to go over that. So that's like a minimum required for the lease. Now, another thing is really common mistake for the foreigner. Like I know some people, like the Chinese landlord, ran into the tenant also speak Chinese. So what they do, they just take an English lease and then they translate it, explain it to the tenant and say, okay, this is what's the rent mean, this is what's this is what and you just sign here and you sign there. You explain it in a different language, but the contract itself, the lease itself is in English. So if that's the case, it's not valid. Okay, you have to make that lease into the same language as a tenant speak. Okay, otherwise that would be invalid. So make sure you remember that. Okay, so that's the okay. Now, what about how do you screen? How do you pick the tenant? Okay, now if there's some people tell me that, hey, they saw a YouTuber somewhere out of the state, and they say, if you don't like that person, you don't have to rent it to them, because this is a relationship between you and that person. When they move in, it's like you don't like it, most likely we cannot do a business together, so we don't rent it to them. Can you do that? Most likely, I mean, in other state, I don't know, but here you cannot. You cannot say you don't like it, you don't rent it to that person. Now, how can you screen the tenant that you can say we don't rent it to that person? Now you can set the rule. You can say, okay, you have to make 3 times of the income compared to the rent, or you have to have a certain credit score up to, say, like, 700. If you don't have 700, I'm not going to rent it out. I mean, you can set up some rules, but you have to follow through. You cannot advertise in 700, but then you ended up accept the tenant that has a lower credit, or based on because you like that person or you don't like that person. You cannot do that. You can base on the income and the credit. Okay. Now, you cannot discrimination on family status. There's a lot of people come in and then you're asking, are you married? You have kids? How old are your children? Seems like it's a conversation. It sounds like it's just a conversation, but it could use against you because you are trying to kind of find them out. You may not like they have a kids and you don't run into them. Don't do that. Don't ask those questions. Okay, just don't. It's easy. And then you cannot discriminate based on the source of income. Like say the Section 8 tenant, you cannot refuse. If they are Section 8, say I'm not renting to Section 8. No, you cannot do that. Now, in terms of income, let's say that you rent 3,000 or say 4,000, but the tenant only pay 1,000, the government pay 3,000, and then you only use that 1,000, the tenant responsible, and then you check their income compared to your rent of 1,000, they're responsible, not the whole 4,000. Okay, and then you can also cannot discriminate because there's citizenship. Okay, so that's simple. Okay, regarding the can you reject the applicant based on the criminal record? Yes, if it's a short term, but if it's been a long term, like been a long time, then you cannot reject them. Okay. Okay, this is like ridiculous, but there's people happen. So they say if the tenant doesn't pay the rent, or and you just shut down the electricity or utility, if you pay for it, or can you just change the lock and lock them out? Definitely no. This is like very, very important, and they are surprised. There are some landlord do that. This is totally illegal. Cannot do that. Okay, make sure you don't do it. Now for the credit agency, can you report if the tenant does not pay? Can you report to the credit agency? Yes, you can, but you have to give the notice to the tenant 30 days before submit that negative report. Okay. Now, what is the landlord's duty? This like simple, right? Really simple. You have to provide a peaceful and a quiet enjoyment of the house to the tenant. Now you cannot just bump in. A lot of people say, "Oh, I have the key. I can just go in." Unless you have an emergency repair, otherwise you cannot just bother the tenant. Okay. Now, of course, you have to provide a safe and a healthy place. You cannot have a leaking place. You have to have a smoke detect in case there's a fire. Carbon monoxide, that's like a basic requirement for to have the house. Okay. And then also you have to provide certain disclosure regarding the property. Now, what disclosure? Let me share with you. There's a list. It's pretty long list, also like 40 pages. But I'm just simply go through a simple one like for Besto. And yes, you have to require a bug bat and also carbon monoxide compliant. Is anybody die in the house for the last 3 years? That's required. And also, if the house is in default, like you haven't paid the mortgage, lender before your house as required. Also, this environmental doesn't have to, but the flood disclosure is the area, it's a flooding area, it's a gas meter, electric meter, you have to require. Identify the landlord or the manager that you require, and lab hassle report you have to provide, lab pain, also and Megan's law about sex offender in the area, you have to divide, lab cleanup or mold, and proposition 65 warning, and the rank cap, you have to provide this rank cap or just course. This is a new since 2020 about rank control as cost the state, smoke alarm, and those are required, and also a water conservative. Okay, for some area. Besides, this is just state level, like water heater breaks in case of earthquake with the water heater, fall down and water the area. Water sub-meter, if there's one. So this is just a state level. It could be a local level, like in a San Jose city or other city, they have a special requirement, then you can go to the city to check out. I'm just talking about this rent, so the state level. So this is required. This is a disclosure. What else they have here? Quickly. Okay, now this is surprisingly happened like lately. They were the tenant move out but left a lot of personal, like you call it personal stuff in the house. Can you just remove them outside, throw them away? No, the question is no, it's illegal to do that. You have to notice the tenant to come back and take it. If they don't take it, then you have to do something like properly handle those things, provide a notice. Okay, so it's not something that you can just throw them away. Now, in terms of eviction, if they don't pay rent, what is a successful eviction? For this case, I would highly suggest you to talk to the real estate attorney, landlord, and tenant real attorney. What happened is if you did it yourself, if you did it wrong, you have to repeat, right? You have to give a notice to pay or quit. If you didn't do it right, and then you have to repeat the process starting again. And it could be like 60 days or 90 days, taking forever to some people, right? And plus, like in a certain time, like last couple years during the COVID pandemic time, you cannot evict anybody. Then you cannot do any of those. If you did it wrong, then you are violation. So anything related to eviction, first thing to consult the real estate attorney. Now, like I say, you cannot demand, the landlord cannot demand just pay cash. Now, if the tenant file bankruptcy, you cannot do anything. Okay, you cannot enforce the lease. Cannot ask for a lease if they are in bankruptcy, at least temporary. You cannot do until the bankruptcy is released. Okay, another thing is it hopefully never happen, but if it happen, you have to handle it properly. Actually, we had I know one landlord back a few years back. They found their home has some kind of a mold, and then they have to pay the tenant in a hotel to fix it until everything clean and then put it back. And same thing for uninhabitable case like earthquake damage or something. If it's a partially damaged and you need time to fix it, you have to pay the tenant in a hotel and fix it and then put them back again, right? But if it's totally damaged, you cannot. You have to rebuild the house, and then you don't I mean, you don't have to pay the tenant for the rent payment. They have to return the security deposit. So that's a quick overview for most of the questions and answer. There's a lot of detail that I did not go through, but just common questions and answers. So hopefully you'll learn something. It's very important that you understand so you don't make a mistake. Okay. Another quick thing is happened lately is the people do the ADU, like illegal conversion of garage into the like a living unit, and then they rent it out. What happened after the tenant find out this is illegal unit, and they back out the landlord. They say, hey, I've been here for 3 years and paying you over 30,000 rent. You give it back all to me, then I'm okay. I'm not going to report to the city. Otherwise, they're going to report to the city and you're going to pay a fine. You're going to have to, maybe tear down and have to convert it back to legal. It's going to cost you more than the rent. So they kind of get that kind of notice. How do you handle it in terms of that? Are you going to pay them? Or, what happened when you have an illegal, unpermitted union, what is the risky? So you have to consider that. It's either make it legal, get the permit, get it right, or otherwise it's possible that you might get a backup from the tenant. They might, ask for money or possible all the rents. A few years back in Hayward, there were one case like that. The landlord had convert like two units in the back illegally without permit. That's a few years back. I would say 6-7 years back in the case that I heard from the real estate lawyer. And what happened is when you go to the court, most likely 90%, we say more than 90% chance the landlord will lose the case. So what happened is because it's an illegal unit, and then the tenant has been there for like over 10 years. I think the final penalty is the landlord pay back like 300K for that all the rent that they have been paying. So it's very, very bad. So if you have an illegal unit, I highly suggest you don't rent it or make it get a permit. It's easy to get because we are short of housing. A city easy to approve the ADU or additional unit, right? So get a permit, it bring the value higher for your property. So it's worth it to doing that way instead of like rent it out, taking the risky of potential loss or the rents that you collect. Okay. So hopefully you learned something. I appreciate you stay with me. Talk to you soon. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.